Okay, I'll call this Plan Commission meeting for August 8th to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Gary Hersberg.
Here.
Joe Zitzelberger.
Here.
Brian Wallace.
Here.
Chris Thomas.
Here.
Ryan Malish. Kevin Phelps.
Here.
Ryan Malish did email me. He's running about 10 minutes late, but he will be here.
Okay, thanks. All right, first item we have is minutes. Look for a motion on that.
Motion to approve the minutes? I'll second.
Motion by Gary, second by Chris. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comments. Is there anybody here who'd like to make a comment on items that are on or off the agenda this evening? Tracy, any forms?
I don't have forms. They're just welcome to speak.
No form?
Are we on?
You're on.
Time limit
3?
or about or not?
3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Well, my name is John Dooley. I live at 2611 Dublin Way. 3 minutes isn't enough time, but I'll go as fast as I can. First of all, before I even get started, it was always bothered me, and I was on a public board, that I gotta come up here and make a comment on something that you folks haven't even talked about. Connor's gonna present the presentation, yet I'm expected to comment before I even know what his presentation's about. I always thought that was backwards. I'd rather do it at the end of the meeting. I'd like to at least listen to what you folks and Connor has to say, because maybe I'll duplicate a lot of things. He might answer a lot of questions. That's just a comment. The presentation is for 85 townhouses on 6.93 acres. It happens to abut my property. That's why I'm here. I guess my biggest concern is I think 85 townhouses on 6.93 acres sounds like a heck of a lot of planning in there. I don't know if that's too much, too little. I mean, I don't have the answers for that. That just sounds like a lot to be a transitional area, to put 85 townhouses on that little piece of property. That's my biggest concern with the whole thing. And I don't want to be a person who just says, no, not my backyard, because that's not really what I'm all about. So when we first moved here, this is going to tie in a little bit to some other things that happened, but it was interesting. I read the paper last week. Pool referendum they're talking about. I don't want to, one way or the other, that doesn't really bother me. But one of the things in the paper that one of the trustees said, that looking at a pool in a yet-to-be-developed neighborhood would be great, so the new homeowners would have full knowledge of the plan. Now, that actually makes sense to me. This is the plan that I looked at when I bought my property. I asked the builder, what's going to be behind me? What is there? You just share those a little bit. And as you'll see on this thing, what is there when I bought and was told 7, 8, 9, and 10 are single-family homes. And that's where my property is. It's right along here on Dublin Way. So that's what we envisioned. So I kind of thought to myself, good plan for the pool, but how about me? Or anybody else that bought and had a plan like this for the development. And I know things can change, but that's the point I want to make was, I'd like to see a plan when I built my house and bought the property that is kind of for sure. Just like the trustee would like to see that plan for a pool if they put it in a new development. I think they were talking about across in Kilkenny West. That's a point that I wanted to make. Another point I wanted to make was, Connor, this is going to help you out because I think you guys bought a piece of property you don't know what the hell to do with, but Trustee Hersberg mentioned in the paper that he thought that was really nice that he could envision a pool on the corner of Q and Woodland. This piece of property is 1 block off the corner of Q and Woodland. So I threw this out before and I'll throw it out again. It may be a terrible piece of property, but there it is. There's the corner of Q and Woodland. You want a pool? There it is, right there. You got, it said he needed about 5 acres for the pool. You got 7 acres to work with there. So that would be something you could do with it. So I'm not just throwing out things here that I disagree with, because there's an opportunity for you. Lastly, I'll say, because I'm sure my 3 minutes are up.
Yeah.
This is the last thing I'll say. Phil Williams, don't know Phil from Adam. We're a new resident, but I don't know what kind of weight he throws around here. Obviously, I probably don't throw much. His point with the pool thing was, if you take a tree out of that park, he's out of here. You put 85 townhouses behind me, I'm out of here too. He can call it, I can call it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Amy Fox.
Hi, how are
I
you?
just realized that we have a connection here,
Yeah.
same grade school. I'm John's neighbor. I live at 2608 Dublin, so I am right on the other side of the street from number 10. So what's interesting is I too, when I built my house, asked, what's going up on that hill? And this is what I was shown, and this is what I agreed to when I bought my lot to build on. Mine is dated of 5/11/18. I'm really glad I saved it because this is what I had envisioned for the neighborhood that I was going to raise my daughter in. My 2 points are, one, I'm curious what came from that survey that I took regarding the parks and green space and what all we wanted to do with our village with regards to developing our green space and our parks. I'd like to know what came from that, and if that is like I put in that I feel we need a lot more green space. I would love to see this area deeded back to the city or the village for green space. It would be a lovely addition to the existing park there. And there's great vistas and views and everything up there. It is kind of the last big green space for that whole development that we could have. Especially because they're going to be building another development across the street that I just think this is a really difficult area to develop because I can guarantee you myself, John, all the neighbors along Dublin will fight to have anything of mass density put there. This is what I agreed to 4 houses, not 18 or whatever that was going to be. So my first choice would be that we put it back to green space. You could deed it back. It would be a nice tax deduction for you guys. It would be a lovely addition to Dublin Park that there could be the up and the lower. And then my second one is if you can't do the green space or you won't do the green space, put it back to what it was agreed to initially. I do not want to see this huge wall of 3-story buildings up on my hill. My office looks right out that window every day. It would drive me nuts. So thank you very much. And when can we get that survey results? I looked on the website. I didn't see it anywhere.
Sure, so, very quickly, that's part of the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan that's being updated. The plan isn't set to be finished until later this year.
Okay.
Survey results were distributed at the last Parks meeting. I believe that was last week.
Oh, okay.
So they may be available soon on the Parks website if they're not yet.
Okay. I think
Okay.
great addition for some green space up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I direct a comment to
And-
Connor and not you folks or can't?
Maybe at some point, when we get him to talk, I might allow any questions. Maybe. Okay, that's a maybe, solid maybe. Any others, Tracy? All good? Okay. Then let's move on to our business item. Concept plan for an 85-unit residential townhouse-style development located along the east side of Simon Crestway on Outlet 2, Woodland Crest Plat.
Thank you, Chair Zellner. Good evening, Plan Commissioners, and this is, I guess, information for the public as well, just to note. So what is before you this evening is a concept plan. It is not a formal submittal. FDG has come before you asking for your comments, so there's not necessarily any action on this item, but really it is, again, a concept plan for an 85-unit residential townhome-style development located on the east side of Simon Crestway. The plat portion of the plat map is shown on the screen. The lands are within the Woodland Crest development, but are currently zoned A1, and to accommodate really much of any development on this site, a rezoning to a suitable zoning designation would need to be accommodated, would be needed to accommodate that type of development. So again, there are 85 total units. 85 specific units. They are going to be located under this plan within 6-unit buildings. And Tracy, can you go to the site plan, please? See it? Yep. And so as shown on your packet, so to the right side of the screen, that's more oriented to the north. So the site arrangement is as shown on the screen. There are 3 6-unit buildings proposed at the north end of the bulb for Dolan Avenue. I would point out at this point that portion of the development is actually a different land use designation in the comp plan. The lands immediately east of Simon Crestway are included in the mixed use or transition zone. However, that little northeast stub is within the community residential designation of the comp plan. The architectural intent of the project is to utilize a modern craftsman style, including the use of combination of vertical and horizontal siding, alternate facade treatments and articulation, stone masonry accents, and conventional pitched roof with gable features to fit more into the residential neighborhood that's existing and planned in the area. The approximate north half of the site would be Phase 1. The proposal would be built in 2 phases. Phase 1 first, that's north, that would drain, those lands would drain to the north in an existing stormwater facility. Phase 2, the buildings there would drain to the south, which would be in an expanded bioretention and stormwater facility. So again, the applicant is here and probably can fill in a lot more the blanks. But again, this is just a concept plan, so they're really looking forward to your commentary as far as direction. Is this going in the right direction or not? What would you like to see here, et cetera? So with that, if okay with you, Chair Zellner, turn it over to Connor.
I was gonna go up to the podium, but I don't think you guys wanna watch me talk to the walls or just go over by the screen. Good evening, everyone. Connor Kearney, Forward Development Group. First, I'd just like to thank Plan Commission for giving this another review and providing us feedback. I know this site's been in front of the group here a number of times, so, but we do believe with the feedback we've received, we've landed on a spot that I think, has some promise here. So, just to spend a little bit of time on history, the previously contemplated project here was a senior living project. 3 and 4 story buildings, a single building on the site, upwards of 180 units, and that's what was previously shown on this site. We received a great deal of feedback on that concept plan, and from residents, from staff, from Plan Commission, and through that process, many important items came up, but 2 main items were the most critical. The first was land use. Is this an appropriate land use transition from the commercial areas to the single family? And the second was building mass. There were concerns with the single large building, obviously, that's directly adjacent to single family homes in an already sensitive topographical situation, just on the natural topography of these 2 areas. So with those 2 items, though we can't change natural topography of the site, we did go back to the drawing board, took a hard look at the design, did up sourcing an alternate product here for this site, and that changes the land use, but greatly improves the building massing situation that was previously identified as a major issue. So we're excited to share the plans for this 85-unit townhome development. As Tim mentioned, it's a combination of 5 and 6 unit buildings. To confirm, these would be all ownership product. These would be fee simple ownership through a condominium plat. What really drives this product, and we're aiming to fill a market need, not just in Waunakee, but Dane County and the country in general. With the current market of inflated construction costs and interest rates constantly increasing, providing a home ownership opportunity at a competitive price point is probably more important now than it's been in a long time. And this provides residents an opportunity for that ownership, enter the Waunakee market, that might be something different from a traditional single-family home, but still offer those nice amenities and adjacent in the community. So we're excited about the project. We do believe there's been a helpful evolution through all the comments to date. This wasn't come up just out of nowhere. It was through all the feedback we've received over the course of the past 2 years. Before turning it over, I would like to comment on that northeast leg. I knew that would likely be a big part of the discussion here today. And I think Amy had mentioned that conceptual plan was in May of 18 when you showed May 11th, 2018. And that's exactly correct. It was a conceptual plan. The general development plan for this project was approved in 2019, and it didn't even specify zoning for that parcel at that time. But we did show conceptual plans. As with conceptual plans, we didn't do any detailed engineering and design. More and more we looked at it, those 4 lots and connecting on Dolan, I think we have about a 25-foot elevational change to overcome between the Dolan Avenue extension and up to what would be in our site. We're sitting at about 960 as an elevation here. We're about 935 there, and it's about a 180-foot run, linear feet. That puts the slope at about 14%, which will exceed standards. I'm not, the biggest caveat here is I'm not a civil engineer, but the topographical constraints between the two sites was prohibitive for that design, even though it was shown as an early concept plan. We didn't get into the detailed engineering. So that was a major concern, and the cost to construct that infrastructure, even if it was possible, there would be no way that those 4 lots would be affordable to the consumer, which would counteract exactly what we're trying to do here, is provide an affordable product in the market, not create lots that we would need to sell upwards of $300,000 just to recoup, which we wouldn't do anyway. So we're trying to fit the topographical challenges in with the context of the project. Of course, the GDP SIP would be heavily screened, and did just want to make a comment that these would not be 3-unit buildings. These would be 3-story. These would be 2-story buildings. The height would be no different than this 2-story home. that was
There's a garage on
constructed.
the first floor.
Correct.
Garage and then 2 stories above it.
Correct. Yep. It's graded below, so you have your garage entries. This would be a 2-story elevation, and your grades drop down. It's a 4 to 6 foot grade change between your front stoop and your back. So it's how you grade the site and manage stormwater to enter that garage floor. So with that, I'll conclude. If there's obviously going to be around for any questions, comments, I'm happy to answer anything. But thank you for even taking a look at it. We really appreciate it.
Okay, commissioners, comments, questions for Connor at this point? Start with Kevin.
What's
Go
the
ahead.
price point of the townhouses?
That's the $1 million question.
We don't want them even $1 million. Okay.
It is dependent on where costs are at. You know, we're targeting the entry level, so these units with a broad range, you know, anywhere from the 450 to the 550 range. And that would include, you know, all your fees, the condo. It would be, you know, common area maintenance, you'd have your amenities, but it'd be an ownership product. So that's the general range we're targeting. In a perfect world, these would be sub 4. But in today's market, it's very difficult to hit that. But we're able to do some design with the shared walls. You're able to gain efficiencies. It's not a standalone product, but that's the general range, the 450 to 550.
And what about how is parking allotted per unit?
We have 3 stalls per unit. 2 are covered garage stalls, so 2-car garage it's covered, and all driveways would be a minimum of 20 feet to accommodate visitor vehicles. We assume 1 visitor if 2 cars are parked in there, so 3 per unit.
Thank you.
Ryan Wallace, any questions?
No questions, no.
Gary?
I guess I'm concerned for the residents who are there. You know, again, they bought based on what at the best time was a concept plan of, and you know, you're making a huge investment in your home. I think it's difficult for me to look at and hear comments from them and say, yeah, that looks great, because to me it's, you know, it's too much mass, it's too close. I think could affect their property values. And so I'm concerned on the whole scale of the project itself and how close it is to the neighbors and just the scale.
The density is significant.
Yeah.
It's-
What would you do there, Gary, if you had a magic wand? Is there anything that makes sense? That's what
Well,
I'm struggling with.
If you could scale it from Simon Crestway, you know, if they're 2-story up on Simon Crestway with the garage, whatever, but as you get closer to these lots, the density and the scale just isn't right. I mean, if that's supposed to be a transition, this doesn't provide a transition to the neighbors who are living there. And so that's my issues with it.
Joe?
I've spent honestly a good portion of the day digging through some of this stuff. I went out and walked the site. The grade, I think, is a significant concern here. And how we fit this density onto it is honestly kind of beyond me. I don't like the northeast piece where that is. I think my biggest concern, though, comes to things like EMS, fire, you know, whether they're able to even get vehicles into here and be able to turn around if needed. Particularly in that northeast section, I'm not quite sure how that would even work. And then as soon as you've got cars and driveways on either side, that becomes very tight.
Chris?
I guess the only questions I have are more for staff on the zoning of this. Can you go into more detail on that? Like how is that working? Is it coming back to us to rezone this?
It would. So currently the lands are zoned A1. So again, as I said a little bit earlier, like any to accommodate anything of any scale, this would have to be rezoned. We assume the applicant would probably ask for this to go into a planned development zoning similar to what's across the street. And so that would come back before you and the village board to be approved. Both the GDP would come to this body and the board. The SIP would come before the plan commission.
And joint plan commission.
I'm sorry, thank you, and joint plan commission. So this is in the joint planning area, so this will go, as you'll hear in a second, or in a little bit, this would go before the joint plan commission as well.
Okay.
Brian?
I don't know if I have anything new to add and that hasn't already sort of been touched on. I do think it's heading in the right direction. I'll give it that from where we were before. So I like that. I'm still, since day one, you know, the elevation change has always been tricky. I think the further we can stay away from the property line, it helps. It's not great. I don't know how to overcome that. I'll kind of leave it there. And I apologize, I didn't have time. They got away from me. I did want to kind of go back to the genesis of this and sort of jog my memory. I don't know if I missed that maybe at the very beginning here, but what was sort of initially shown there in terms of once people started buying the adjacent lots, just as a, not to think there's an answer there, but just for my own sort of frame of reference for how it does or maybe doesn't impact the neighbors. So that's, I don't want to totally punt on the answer, but I do want to do a little bit of my own homework there. Sorry for not having that done. You know, the comments about access, I mean, I think that type of stuff will get flushed out. I mean, just as plans get set, as you start putting some turning radiuses for equipment on here, I think that almost gets forced out of through the process. So I think we can address that, but there's still a lot of units, small area. Okay, I'll stop rambling about that.
I don't view it as rambling, you're just getting stuff out, so.
Thinking out loud.
Connor, what, of the houses or the lots that are on Dolan there, how many of you have you spoken to, the residents?
We followed a similar procedure as the public notice requirements. There's a certain radius, I think that 300-foot radius from subject property or something like that. So we placed mailers and went around and sent those. The number that have personally reached out has been a handful. John and Amy have been probably more active in some reaching out, but I have had conversations with others through the public neighborhood meeting process. We had one on May 20th of 2021 and then one on June 30th of 2021 as well.
And how many of those folks came to those meetings? Just a handful, you're saying?
That would be my guess. I'm not sure, to be honest, how many were represented.
So the concept that you came, did you take into account the feedback from those folks as you were putting this concept in front of us now?
We did, yeah. So, I mean, the buffer areas, the change in use is dramatic. It's the complete opposite of what was shown before. So, the hope was to decrease density, even from what was referenced in that May of 2018 concept plan to decrease that density and source it with an alternate product type that's in need in the community.
Okay. And this picture, to me, looks like apartments. Don't take it the wrong way, but it looks like a larger apartment than it does a smaller type unit
Right.
from a density standpoint.
Sure.
So I think one of the comments was about the garages, even though they're on the back side of this. You really have 3 levels, more or less, as it looks, or 2.5, 2 3/4, something along those lines. So it does look, from a massing perspective, bigger than what's kind of conveyed. From the residents' standpoint, you never know what's gonna go in back there. That's really what it comes down. When you buy your piece of property that's on a spot that's not really designated for what it's going to actually be, it's a challenge. And I know that I had a neighbor that we bought a place, and he put up a big building that just blocked the lake view. That was his property. He could do that. It was totally within his rights. I think that from a massing standpoint, how many, was the initial presentation, how many places? What, the apartments?
The apartments, we had 150 units, those 3 50-unit buildings. There was an office building and then those 4 lots. And then the previous senior living was a phase 1 of 180 units with an expandable up to 220 or 240, I recall.
And we've dropped it to how many now here?
85.
Okay, so that, to me, is a significant change. As you said, it kind of flip-flopped, and I appreciate that you got, the neighbors' input as much as you could. I don't know what that input was, so I'm relying on the people that came to those meetings, what they provided for you. Obviously, this is just a concept, more or less, right now, the same as we've already seen. And to our 2 residents that are here, I would like to hear from those other residents too, to see what's different that they've presented compared to what you gave them for feedback. It's hard for me to know. I can take Connor's word, I can take your word. It's hard, but not seeing that information is a challenge.
There are 14 families that are on an internal email that have responded to Connor. So we have a neighborhood group that is focused on being aware of what's going on here. So there's 14 families, actually.
Perfect. And I think that we need to hear from that. On the flip side, Connor, I think you guys are working, and you're trying for the residents too, as well as the village, for what you're trying to accomplish within this. I think that there's still some challenge from what I'm hearing, from a density standpoint. I know the less the dense it can be, the numbers aren't gonna work as well for you guys. Fair to say. And the question Kevin asked in regards to, what the cost of these 450 to 550, that's a challenge too from where I sit for what these are going to be. Did we see how big they were gonna be square foot wise? What you're anticipating?
There's 2 and 3 bedroom options. I think they go up to the 21 or 2,200 square foot in that range for the 3 bedroom.
Okay.
Chris?
Go ahead.
This is the area that really concerns me is, if this is 2.5 stories for these people who live here, and, here, if this is the back of your driveway, if this is, the garage side where it's 3 stories, this is the mass part that concerns me. Up there, out here, I don't think it concerns anybody. But for those people that really get, you get 20-foot setback there, you can see the line almost to that corner. I mean, that's across the room here, to have a 3-story building in your backyard, it's a tough thing to handle.
Again, I agree with that. I'm just trying to put out there,
Right.
we're listening. We have to listen to all the residents as well as our developer who wants to, they've purchased this land and have certain understandings of what they can or cannot put on that land, correct, Brian?
Well, the bottom line is the property needs to be developed consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
That's by statute and that's by the annexation agreement.
And with what they're proposing, is that in the comprehensive plan?
Well, I'm not a planner. I mean, I can tell you what I can read the language for you. Then it's up to probably Tim and Jason to make a recommendation when you ultimately have the proposal before you, and then for you all and the Joint Planning Commission, and then the village board, if it gets to the village board, to make that determination. I mean, I can give you the language in the comp plan. It is, I mean, I agree with Tim. It is very significant, the difference between the two uses. The use for what I'm gonna call the larger parcel right on Simon Crestway, the language in the comp plan says, this site along the east side of Simon Crestway, when it is connected between Peaceful Valley Parkway and Woodland Drive, is suitable for multi-unit residential use such as apartments or senior housing, to serve as a transitional use between commercial uses west of Simon Crestway and the existing neighborhood to the east. So the use itself, I mean, sounds like it's there. I mean, it's it's some form of multi-unit. The density, as you've been discussing, that's probably up for debate. The language, then there's a number of paragraphs that deal with the community residential based on page 73. I think I would defer to Tim and Jason as to, how they apply those different paragraphs to that smaller rectangular piece. I will say that there is language in here that talks about the fact that new residential developments that adjoin existing neighborhoods should include housing that is compatible with adjoining established neighborhoods, and then it goes on. And now that is only one of 10 paragraphs in that section, so there's a lot to be looking at. But at the bottom line is, at the end of the day, it's what's in the comp plan. And, on the flip side, I would say, I mean, I certainly appreciate the circumstances when people are buying a new home. I will say that the developer and the village and the Joint Planning Commission and Planning Commission are not limited just to this concept plan. And in other words, there is flexibility within the comprehensive plan. Now, that may be that the density comes down based on your discussion, but the initial use on at least immediately adjacent to Simon Crestway appears to meet the comp plan.
So I think our goal tonight from this is to give Connor feedback from this side of the table. The residents have provided to Connor, and where we're trying to come in is in the middle, so to speak, for what's gonna be acceptable, what's not gonna be acceptable to this body, on this property at this point.
And the only thing that I would add to that is, keep in mind, remember that this is in the joint planning area. So, as is typically the case that we've had in these areas, my understanding is the Joint Planning Commission depends a lot on what this body says, and it's a recommendation. It is ultimately a decision from a statutory standpoint by the Joint Planning Commission as to whether or not this would go to the village board.
So a couple of things that one of the things that jumps out at me, obviously density is a concern from what I see here. The other thing is on that specific little note, or the little piece behind at the end of Dolan, you talked earlier, Connor, about the elevation change that already exists, and then we put in a 2.5-story building on top of that elevation. That's a significant concern for that area there. Does something a lower profile, a single story, blend a little better potentially, maybe, and helps that transition from residential to maybe a higher density as you go towards Simon Crestway. The elevation change there for that little piece for sure is concerning.
Any other feedback that everybody can give right now? I think that's a solid point right now, what you just made.
I do too. That's why sometimes I think for Connor to look for a way to go from 2 of these to 1 of these, or something where it sets back, it's not so in your face, maybe it even stares back somehow, but it's just not such a wall right there. Might be a good compromise for everybody.
And the units on Simon Crestway? I mean, I see that's the furthest away. That makes sense. Maybe those are the taller of the group on that
I
side.
don't see that being.
Yeah, how many stories was the apartment building? 3?
It was 3, wasn't it?
That's
With-
3, yeah.
with garage?
That was 78 unit, 3-story.
So 3 above ground and right? 3 above?
3
ground?
above ground and then underground parking, yep.
Yeah,
And
so
you guys
from
are talking about the one that's been approved, not,
The west side.
yeah, west
Yeah,
side. Okay.
it's not built yet, yes, correct. So from a transition from there to this, you look at elevation of that building, it's not overly, actually steps down probably a little bit,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in
Yeah.
relation, so.
Yeah, from
You know,
the
ma-
front.
you know, and if you look at that, you know, you go from Simon Crestway down towards Dolan, you know, do those step down a little bit all the way down. Again, I can't speak to what that means for number of units and size and whatnot, but, you know, it's labeled transition, should it transition in elevation as well, so to speak?
Right.
It might be helpful for us to understand, you know, if this is at, you know, if this is at lots at 720 and this is at, you know, 760 and this is at 780 or whatever that is, you know, it would give us some ideas because we're trying to visualize this here, and that would help us understand transition a little bit better, I think.
All right, and you may give me a dirty look, a mean look. I hope you don't, Brian. Would you guys like to have any other comments based on what you
I
heard
would,
this night?
just a couple.
Just, and when I say that, like,
You should maybe.
2 minutes.
I think that the issue here, part of the issue is, Connor said that northeast little thing, that's like, kind of like for me, the big deal. And he said, we can't do anything with that, single family or whatever. Do me a favor, Connor, give another developer a kick at that. See if they'd like to tackle that little piece of property. I offered to buy it from you before, and I'm not gonna sit on it and do nothing with it. I got a gentleman behind me here that thinks he could do something with that. I'd like to at least talk, because I think it is doable to put, that would make a big, my 2 minutes isn't up.
So those negotiations can happen outside
Okay,
this room.
yeah. You asked a question to
Just, I want
Connor.
comments about what he stated.
Okay,
if have.
you asked the comment about the people on Dolan. Those lots are all empty,
They didn't.
the west, they're empty. There is nobody on Dolan. They're on the east side. And that's the, well, you asked me to keep my comments separately, but I felt bad for him because I thought if he gets that thing, who's gonna buy that lot? And then the other thing that it just couldn't get past me was, you were very complimentary, and I applaud that, telling him that you dropped it from 180 down to 85. But when you start here and you drop it to here, if it would have been dropped from 85 to something else, then to me that would be reasonable. That's all, you know, so that's my comments, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
And mine, I also am grateful that you've made some changes. However, I think what I did like with the last presentation is you did those elevations where you showed us like what it would look like, and that was very helpful. One of the concerns I have about this is they're all in these straight line walls. And it's going, I forget the technical term for it, but you showed how the walls kind of, how our view would be. And these are really solid walls with no breakup. What I liked about the previous drawing was there was little groupage and there was some spots where actual sunlight could come in. I'm really confused, like if I have a visitor coming and they park, if I'm the middle unit, they're gonna park in my driveway, but then they gotta walk all the way around to the front to get to my front door. That seems very strange to me. I wouldn't enjoy that. And then there's going to be a ton of people then walking in this other area. I don't see the need for the pitched roofs. There's tons of places now that have flat roofs. I think that could be accommodated. I'd like to see even a green roof. I'd like to take some environmental stuff into account. That's kind of, I think we're all experiencing some global warming issues, so I'd love to see more green and less blacktop.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Connor, you got enough?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. We understand it's a tough site, and there's very sensitive topographical and spatial relationships between both. So we knew coming in that, you know, that would be a very important part, so we're prepared to take a detailed look at it. We'll put spot elevations. Gary, that was a great point. Spot elevations on all these, doing the same 3D renderings. I think that would all be very helpful. And, you know, the hope is to show that the elevation of these and the two-story from the facade, even though it's 2.5 in the back, you know, it'd be no different than getting a building permit application for a two-story home if those were 4 single-family lots. But we thank you very much for the feedback. It's perfect.
Thank you. All right, we can move along then. Did I miss something?
Nope.
Did I miss?
There's only,
Oh, I have the joint plans. All right, so I'm looking at the wrong agenda. I'm like, wait a second. That's why, okay. I'm like, I thought there was one thing. All right, next we're moving on to our Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission. So the first thing we have is, well, I'll
There's
leave
a,
it to you.
yeah, there is a CUP, conditional use permit to allow an accessory structure exceeding this 800 square foot limit. This is on a property on the east side of County I, north of 113. And then Connor will be back before the JPC tomorrow to go through the same exercise, presenting this before that body. So those two items will be at tomorrow's meeting.
And a side note that tomorrow's Joint Plan Commission meeting is here
Oh,
because of the election in Westport. I don't know if you noticed that on your agenda.
no, I would have been over there.
We can't be in the election polling place, so we have to be here.
Perfect.
And that'll be downstairs, right?
Downstairs at
At
6.
6.
At
At
6.
6.
Thank you.
Okay.
How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everyone.